Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm the Riviera Fish, and today is a slightly different one. We're going to be going over certain tips and tricks for this game. Right now I do have a team of Spider-Verse, of course, which perfectly encapsulates a lot of the stuff that I wanted to say. So the first tip I always like to go for is to build a consistent team. Why is that important? Well, the game tells you that the more the players play with each other, the more accustomed they are with each other. So for right now, I'm building a team with 2 forwards, 5 midfielders, 3 defenders, and of course 1 goalkeeper. And with that, I'm allowed to allow myself on the bench to have 1 defender, 3 midfielders, and possibly 2 forwards. If I want to, I could maybe add 1 more midfielder to myself there. But other than that, if I have a set idea of what formation I want to go, this allows me to understand what kind of bench I want to build as well. So in case they get injured, in this case I have 2 of them out. I can use one of my defenders, and Ramsey, since he is a flex player, and I'll get to that in a bit. Okay. The second tip I like to add is to have a formation, a specific formation that you want to have, and stick to that formation. This kind of goes in conjunction with tip 1, but when you have this specific build, you know what kind of bench you'll have. So for example, like I said, I have more midfielders than I do defenders and strikers, mainly because I have 5 midfielders. So in the case that both of my strikers are out, let's put good enough on. Okay, I'm a bit of a pickle here, so I change it to a 4-5-1, and it's going to be practically the same formation, but with a few slight changes here, and I can do that because I've chosen the formation 3-5-2. So just in the case that my forward is gone, I can swap it to this formation, and it's completely fine. In the case that I have maybe a defender missing, I just change it back to this, and then drop one of my midfielders back into that defensive position. It is completely fine, but it is important to have that constant formation so you know what kind of build you want to do. It helps when you buy your players, so you know what you're missing, what you need to add to your team, who's the missing link, or who's the weakest link in it, and maybe get rid of them and find a replacement for them. Having a constant formation will help you make those decisions. Tip number 3 is buy players in the early game, buy players with decent stats. But in the later game, so right now in Pro League 2 to Pro League 1, I would buy players with lower potential bars. What do I talk about lower potential bars? Okay, if you look at Godunov, right now you see his potential there. It's not fully maxed out yet. That means I can spend a bunch of my combo cards on him, and I can build more of his stats up until he reaches the highest potential. When he reaches the highest potential, it makes it easier to level up those stats. But sometimes, whenever I train certain cards, I'll use Godunov as an example. So let's say I want to give them a rocket shot. So that's running and shooting. Let's go through that. Okay, he gets the stat gains 5, 6, 6, 1. However, when you do these cards, what's important isn't the stats, it's what the card does. So again, let's do this with Montero. I want to give him something like fast dribble or target man. Target man's a pretty good one. So countering, heading, and weights. Countering, heading, and weights. So right now that gives me 5, 5, 5, 2, and 5. But again, the stats aren't what important. It's what the card does. It makes it so that he's more likely to be passed to, I'm thinking. Due to what the card says, it's target man, he wants to get passed to, he wants to get more chances. If he does that, he's much more better as a striker. So use those cards when the potential bar isn't filled up. Okay? And once they are filled up, say for example, Trump is just about to run out of his one. It's going back down now, but he's close enough to the filled bar. A different example would be Isa. He's at the maximum potential bar, so if I give him something like a Goal Sniffer, this one gives a wide variety of stats to give to the player. And right there, I've increased his willpower to A. It's easy to do that when the potential bar is filled. It makes it so it's a lot quicker to level up those stats. And that's nice when they're full potential bar. However, when you see that a player is over there for quite a long time, they become like Tromp and like Kern. Their potential bar goes down and then it gets weaker, and so it gets harder and harder to give them more cards. It makes them, it's slower to upgrade their stats. So, just to recap that, when you're in Pro League 2 and Pro League 1, prioritize players with low bars like this. Lysenko is a really good example. Look how low that bar is. Look how good his base stats are. He could become better because his potential bar is still not at its highest potential yet. So right now he has about the same stats, even better than Rossetti. Rossetti costs 800 of course, while Lysenko costs 3,100. There's going to be a point where you just have to look over that and buy these players, because it is completely worth it to get these type of players on your team. Tip number 4, if we go back to this screen here, is to buy flex players. Well, what I mean by flex players? Players that can fit more than one role. For example, Ramsey here. Look at his stats, quite all-rounded. I can probably play him as a defensive midfielder, or if I really wanted to, play him as a central defender here. Same thing with, say, Garofalo here. B in shooting, B in speed. Okay, I can probably play him on the right wing, since he's quite fast with a B in speed. But he also has a B in kicking, which means I can probably put him in this position, the attacking midfielder position, or as a striker if I really wanted to. But if I look at Montero, he has a B in kicking and A in speed, so he's slightly better than that. But it's still very important to have these type of players. It means you can move around, and again, if you have injuries in your team, well, you can swap them out with other flex players. Neubauer is a pretty good flex player. He has a B in speed, a C in kicking. Okay, maybe he's not as good as Tromp, but maybe I want to put him there if I wanted to. Completely up to you, but make sure you have these flex players. So not these players like Rossetti, who has a C in kicking, a C in jump, and a B in willpower, which means that he's probably only good in this position here. He doesn't have much speed, so he's not going to run into those positions. He's probably going to stay there. And with the C in jumping, that's okay for a striker. It means he's going to go for those headed goals rather than those field goals like Montero might go for. He has an A in speed, so he'd probably run for those opportunities. And with a B in kicking, he'd probably take those opportunities and be fairly accurate. Okay, tip number 5 is whenever your player changes type, in this case, look at Montero, his type right there says sprinter. Whenever you start out the game, you will always have, here's one, you'll always have all your players balanced. Once they change, it can be random, but it depends on the type of cards you give. Once it changes, make sure you put them in the quote-unquote correct positions. For example, sprinters are good as forwards. They're also tremendous as wingers. So for example, Godunov should be one. Yeah, Godunov is also a sprinter. That's why he currently is my winger, because not only is he A in speed, he's also a sprinter, which means he goes for those runs. If you're a bit confused about those types, I'll go back to the main screen, and in the top corner, there is a question mark. So go back, I'll click on the question mark again, top right corner of the bottom screen. Click on that. And if I go on to Team Camp, it's training, I think, is it? Training. Change it over across. There you go. So if you go into training, Team Camp, and it's slide 12 out of 26, you can read through every single one of these to help you out. Okay, this is for people, if I can speak properly, this is for people who have the game. So you can read through each of these ones and notice what these type of players do well. So if I go into sprinter again, high speed attackers who burst forward without hesitation. Okay, that's a very good description of wingers and of course strikers. Now let's look at another one. Another one I have, if I remember correctly, is Neubauer. Where is he? Here he is at the front there. Neubauer is an explorer. It's quite obvious what it suggests. It means he's going to look around for positions to pass the ball or get passes in. So clearly you'd have him in this position somewhere around the center of the field. Again, it's not imperative to do that. You can put him on the left wing. It doesn't matter at all. But to get the most out of them, I would put them in positions that make sense. So for example, stopper, I would more likely put stoppers in the middle, because they're the ones in front of the goal. The ones on the sides, it doesn't matter. They can be stoppers as well, but I would prefer either markers or seekers. A lot of the time, when you do have them change types, a lot of the cards follow up on how to do that. So if I were to check what type of cards I can make, okay, fast dribble and rapid dribbling. If you do that constantly, more likely you will give them the sprinter bonus, or sprinter type. And if you give them more attacking options, such as the shooting ones, I don't have any shooting ones available because I've just used that shooting one, you will give them the chancer, which means they will likely take up chances to score on goal. Okay, let's go through each of the different types of stats. Tip number 6, know what your stats do. Kicking, quite self-explanatory. This isn't a very detailed game, so there isn't a separate stat for shooting and passing. It is all in one. So this one, kicking, tells you how powerful the player is at kicking, as well as how accurate they are. So with a higher kicking stat, they'll be better at shooting and much more accurate with their passing. Speed, very self-explanatory, but there's a few things that it can do that you might not think of. So of course, speed increases how fast they move. Also, if a player on your team does kind of a terrible pass and it's a bit further away from them, it allows them to catch up a lot quicker than a person with lower speed. Also, when you see them do dribbling, when they kick the ball forward and then dash after it, that increases their speed in the dash as well. Next one is stamina. Stamina is quite, again, self-explanatory, how long they stay in the game. It also... well, no, that's a different one, sorry. Stamina literally just how long they can play the game for. Technique. Technique is how skillful the player is. So whenever you see those players do those moves, like they do a little twirl and go past the player, this tells you how often they would do that. So for Ramsey, he'd do that a bit more often. So would Trump, so would Godunov, and you go down a bit. I won't expect Vlahos to do anything, but let's say Vasquez and Sommer, they might do that a bit less. It also affects how good they are at trapping the ball. That is, when they get their first touch, if it bounces off of them, it means their touch is quite terrible. So if someone does a terrible pass and just blasts it at the player and it bounces off of them, yeah, sure, it's the fault of the player doing the pass, but this increases how much better they are at doing that. It also affects shielding. That is, when the ball is about to go out for a corner kick, goal kick, throw in, whatever it is, they will try and shield the ball from the opposition, trying to get to it. It also affects how often they tackle. As well as that though, toughness. Toughness gives the player stronger tackles. So whereas technique gives you a higher chance of tackling, toughness shows you how effective they are at tackling. Because there are times where another player can straight up dodge the tackle. It also affects how quickly they recover from fatigue. So for Kern and Isa, they would recover a lot quicker than Sommer here. So currently they're in the yellow. The B in toughness would allow them to get out of that a lot quicker. So on the other hand, if they're less tough, there's a higher chance of injury during games. Jumping is by far the most simple one, other than speed, of course. How good they are at jumping, and as expected, it is a top priority for goalkeepers to have good jumping. And I've only just realised that my goalkeeper actually only has a B, while 2 of my field players have an A. So that's quite sad. Willpower next. Willpower. They have a better ability to influence the game. That's what it says in the thingy, on the what's it called, the question mark. But the main thing that this affects is how good they are at playing at away games. As well as that, low willpower players, if I go down to the bottom, so Vasquez and Amato, he's the goalkeeper, secondary goalkeeper, they have a higher chance of getting yellow cards from tackles if they have low willpower. So if I go up, Kern, Isa and Montero would have a better chance of not getting yellow cards when they're playing and they do a tackle. That's it for the stats. Okay, let's get into a game, for example, just to show you a bit more of the stats here. So let's go back to our main setup. Okay, tactics. When you get to these zones, the game does explain to you, when you compress your zone like this, your players have a better chance of passing to each other, and they conserve their energy a lot more. So rather than having to run up to, like, so if we have it like this, all spread out, rather than having our defenders having to move up to pass over to our midfielders, and our midfielders moving up to pass to our strikers, instead, if you do this, there's a higher chance that they will just straight up pass to each other rather than running. And in conjunction to that, if we have attack versus defense, this is quite self-explanatory, but if you have defense, defend and wait for chances, they will just straight up pass to each other. That's another thing. I don't see a difference between these two, mainly in terms of how often they play defensively. So when they do balance play, yeah, they do pass a bit, but defend and wait for chances, they pass a lot. And I'll play that once we get into this game. Players to watch, when I do this, I always go for the strikers, because there's always a maximum of 3 strikers. However, I do change this depending on how good their midfielders are. For example, they have 2 quite high priority midfielders here. If you look at their stats, usually the cost is quite a good indicator of how good they are. So for this one, Maya cost 6,000, has an A in kicking, an S in speed, and an S in stamina, meaning this person's going to stay on the field for quite a long time. So I put a mark onto them. Okay, look at someone else who's quite dangerous. Komarov, Kaiser maybe, Valet, and Antonov. Okay, this point, it is entirely up to you. I usually do look at the stats of the player, but I also look at the goals and assist stats. This person scored 4 and assisted 1 goal, scored 4, assisted 3. Let's go down here. 5 goals, 3 assists, 3 goals, 1 assist, 2 goals, 4 assists. Okay, that was a good mark in my opinion. 7 goals, 5 assists, 1 goal, 3 assists. Okay, maybe I can drop a mark off of this person. Maybe I can put it on someone who's a bit more dangerous. 5 goals, 3 assists, good stats, does cost quite a bit. Okay, I'll put a mark onto them. Okay, let's get into the match. And another tip I'll add on to this one is to say you can park the bus when you need to. There's no shame in doing it. I don't do it in the videos because I know it's boring, but when you're playing it, no one's gonna be watching you. So it's fine, just park the bus. There are moments where I do want the game to speed up a bit, so I do put them in a position where I ask them to move up a bit, and that does cause me to lose a few goals, if you've looked at a few of my videos. Okay, and the final tip I'll have is to use your substitutes effectively. So let's have Irvine on. I know it's quite early to do it, but let's have Irvine on instead of Jordanov, for whatever reason. I want to say effectively, look at the timer at the top right corner of the top screen after I do this. Okay, look, it's still going. And look at that, it has, what, 30 seconds in game? 40 seconds in game? Just wasted. Purely because you decided to use a substitution there. So if the game's quite close and you want it to either finish with your 1-0 win or a 1-1 draw against a really good opponent, if it really comes down to it, use your substitutions and waste time. There's nothing wrong with that. In addition to that, if I try and sub someone on, so in addition to that, it also allows you, when you make substitutions, to change your tactics. So if you made a mistake, tactics-wise, and you think maybe we can play a bit better, you can do that midway through the game. You can do all those decisions, but there is a timer. So bottom right corner of the bottom screen, you can see there's a timer there. If it runs out, it just automatically goes with whatever you left it with. I'm going to run the timer. And there you go, it stopped me from shouting across the pitch. and the game is continued. And again, look at the timer. It still goes when the substitution's going through. Okay, that's it for now. These are the basic tips that I've thought of whilst playing through the game. There are plenty more. If you think I've missed something out, be sure to comment in the comment section. If you feel like I've not gone too detailed, put a comment down below. I can almost definitely answer it. If I can't answer it, do not worry. This game isn't extremely detailed, so if I'm missing something, I highly doubt it's going to be extremely important. And nonetheless, make sure you enjoy the game. This game is incredibly fun in my opinion, and for what it's worth, I think it's like 13 quid on the eShop. I've gotten so much value out of this game. Just make sure you enjoy it. Do not get frustrated. It is just like football. A lot of random events can happen. I've seen my Pro League 1 team lose 6-1 against one of the bottom tier teams, and it can be fun. Right now we're losing 1-0, but oh well. I shall stop the video there. Make sure to drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed it, and if you want more tips and tricks like this, I'll think of some more highly applicable tips that can be used across all the different aspects of the game. So from the beginner league to advanced league to Pro League 2 to Pro League 1. But other than that, make sure you have a good day, and I'll see you next time.